Alright, this is my ProCon speech. We'll get started. Alright. When they are in conflict, the right to a free press is a higher priority than the right to a fair trial. Americans in the United States may feel that although the freedom of press is in fact important to our society, it is not as important as a fair trial. This basic assumption seems logical on the surface, but if you were to take a look at it from a different point of view, you would realize that a trial cannot be fair unless the press have the freedom to report on it. Before I delve into how a fair trial is not possible without free press, I would first like to define both of these terms so that everyone can have a better understanding of what is being discussed. LegalDictionary.lawin.org defines a fair trial as a trial conducted in an orderly fashion before a fair and impartial tribunal with a substantial conformity to law. This idea of a fair trial came about from the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution, which reads, "In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial, by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which districts shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense." Dictionary.com defines free press as a body of book publishers, news media, etc., not controlled or restricted by government censorship in political or ideological matters. The idea of freedom of press is derived from the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, which states, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, of abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." As you can see, both the right to free press and the right to a fair trial are protected by the United States Constitution. This, of course, does not give us reason to say that one is more important than the other. But there are in fact reasons why the right to a free press is a higher priority than the right to a fair trial when they are in conflict. No one can simply stop the press from reporting on a trial, because that would be in direct violation of the First Amendment. Even if the reporting is affecting the fairness of a trial, there are restrictions judges tend to put on the trial to help keep it fair. Examples of these restrictions are things like changing the venue, setting rules for the process in the courtroom, and postponing cases so that the prejudicial hype diminish. These restrictions do not stop the free press, but do a great job of keeping a fair trial. Alexa Lowell states on her website about free press and fair trials that nowadays nearly all states and even the federal courts allow cameras in the courtroom, with only limited restrictions. Since the cable network Court TV started broadcasting in the early 1990s, there seem to be no major complaints of lack of due process or sensationalism. We can see that it is not necessary to rid of free press in order to keep a fair trial. But how does a fair trial require free press in order to be fair? Say the press was completely shut out of a trial because of fear that the trial would become unfair. Do you think the press will just simply forget about the trial and not report on it at all? Of course not. They will give their audience what it wants, and so the information that the press presents will be biased and probably incorrect, just because they lack certain specifics of the trial. This will only increase the unfairness of the trial because the only information the public is receiving is probably false. Someone might argue that the press should then not be allowed to report on the trial at all. Even though I have stated great alternatives to this course of action, which are used by judges, we can hypothetically take this strategy and say it works. Trials would seem to be fair because the press is not allowed to report on them whatsoever. but the byproduct from keeping the press away could potentially do more harm than good. How, you ask? Think about why sex offenders need to be registered. Even though they have paid the price for their actions, they still pose a threat to the public and therefore need to be registered so that people can be educated and ultimately safe. The same idea comes about with the press and a trial. If the press cannot report on a trial, then the public will not be educated and ultimately cannot know if they are safe. This is a huge problem that could affect anyone. Please remember that the right to a free press and the right to a free trial, fair trial, are both important. But a fair trial would not be possible without the right to a free press. Thank you.